Well, hello and welcome to Sunday Encore, where we have candid conversations about the practical applications of Sunday's message. Well, hey everyone, we are back for another episode of Sunday Encore, where we sit down to recall the truths of Sunday's message and consider some practical applications to our everyday lives. We are so excited that you are here joining us today, wherever you might be listening from. It would be wonderful if you could like, share, subscribe, send the link to a friend if this has been a blessing or encouragement to you. It would greatly help us continue to reach more people with the message of Jesus, and we are so looking forward to jumping into our conversation today as we continue this wonderful series, Words from the Wise.
Dun, dun, dun.
So good.
Oh, I did that. But yeah, wise words. Yeah, it's and I think it's good. It's a great conversation to have all the time. As we seek out wisdom.
Totally. I do a yearly read of Proverbs.
Yeah.
And funny enough, it happened to land on the same. It's almost as if the Lord had a plan for me.
It's almost like the Lord.
It landed on the same time that we're doing this series, which has been great.
Yeah.
And just kind of hungry for wisdom, hungry to grow. And it's been an incredible blessing to me.
Yeah.
This Sunday specifically was quite beautifully convicting, just to continue to grow and seek all that the Lord has. And it was, it's been awesome.
Proverbs is great. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs, 31 days in a month generally. And so, it's good practice to read a proverb a day.
Oh, hello.
And so, I think I did that last month too, kind of in preparation for this series.
Yep.
And I just think it's healthy because there's some great biblical principles that if you can apply these things to your life, they will guard your decisions and guide your steps.
Absolutely.
And so it's definitely something you don't need to just read once a year, though once a year is great, but regularly. There's tons of information in there, tons of wisdom, tons of advice. Maybe you don't have an earthly father to talk to, or you don't have that kind of person. You can open Proverbs and that almost becomes that for you a little bit. Even just listen to the audio version of it. Then it feels like you're having a conversation with somebody.
I have a devotional note for normally whatever I'm going through at the time. And I pick a proverb from each chapter this year that resonates with me, and then write it down, write a thought or whatever. And the note's titled "A proverb a day keeps the devil away."
It is true,
and it's facts.
It is true. It is true because again, Proverbs are guiding principles to help you make wise decisions.
Yeah,
and the truth is, the moments where you need the Proverbs the most is in the darkest valleys, right?
Absolutely.
It's those darkest decisions where you're just unclear, you're uncertain. That's why we were laughing about the owl, right? This owl, being able to navigate life in darkness, thriving and hunting and living in complete darkness. And it just
owl hour.
And it just gives us hope that, hey, it is possible to pursue wisdom in an increasingly darkened world.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't say that maybe it's not going to be as obvious, but it's possible to pursue it. And
Very good.
That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to pursue it. And so how do you pursue something? Well, you just draw light to it, right? You just bring attention to it. We talk about it. So we've been talking about just the need for wisdom at the beginning. We had Pastor Jason Small here from...
So good.
He's our district superintendent. So he talked about the power of our words, the power of our tongue last week. And then just past Sunday, we just talked about legacy, leaving a legacy, or even more than that, even practically leaving out a legacy.
Very good.
Worth remembering.
Yeah.
We're all leaving some kind of legacy, and in part, legacy is how you're remembered, right? It's how people associate when they tell stories about you, or, the photos that hang up on the wall, or it's this sort of remembrance of the person you were and the decisions you made and the impact you've had. But more than that, legacy biblically is this idea of it's not just what I will do, but what others do because of what I've done.
Very good.
Like really a lasting legacy is not what I do, but what my children are able to do because of what I have done.
Yeah.
And, you think about this, this is a very common story, especially among immigrant families where the parents come over and they do things. They make the toughest, hardest decisions to move their family. They work long hours and long nights and jobs that nobody really wants to do. I'm generalizing here, but this is
but it's very accurate.
This is a very accurate statement. In order for their kids to do things that they could never have been able to do.
Absolutely.
And because of what their sacrifices that they're making, the price that they're willing to pay, their kids can have opportunity that they would never have had.
Yeah.
And that's the legacy.
Yeah. I have adopted this saying when it comes to my son or leaders in our church or stuff like that, that my ceiling would be their floor.
Yeah.
And that I would be able to raise the bar. And I think about it with my son all the time because he's the closest to me in that way. But that what he can do would farther and greatly surpass anything I could ever do.
That he's going to be able to see things that you would never be able to see because he's standing on your shoulders.
Absolutely.
And it's that perspective. And I think that is such a kingdom perspective. It's such a biblical perspective. I even think about it. Like, honestly, I sit in this building. Mm-hmm. I sit in this building that's been paid for, that has been maintained, that has been someone sought this land out. Someone had enough faith to purchase the land, had enough faith to rally a group of people together to put a building project together, to build a building, to pay off the building. And now here we are sitting in a building that's been bought and paid for and built and labored into. And we are now the living legacy of the investment that people that I'll never maybe know all their names, and I will never fully know the sacrifices in which people paid. Absolutely. I remember when we were in another church, we were in a building project and talking to some people who were navigating the cost of building and all the different nuances that went with it, and sitting with numerous families saying, the church could max out on their loan. So we personally went to get a loan from the bank under our own name, and we gave that whole money, all that money to the church, and then we just paid off the loan. And I'm like,
wow,
that would never happen today. I don't know if that's smart or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just the mentality.
There's faith on it. My word.
There's faith on it. And, but it's just, again, we'd never underestimate sacrifices. Therefore, the same way that I probably would never fully understand my parents' sacrifices.
Absolutely.
Silas will never fully understand your sacrifices.
Totally.
But legacy is not just, again, what you do. That's how you're remembered. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
But a lasting legacy is what others are able to do because of what you have done.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's my age, but I had this moment several months ago. I'm turning 45 this year, which isn't old. I know it's not old. My body feels like it's old when I wake up in the morning. I don't know what it is. It's just like creaking and cracking. It's like that doesn't want to work as well as it should.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit takes a few minutes for it to.
A little bit of work.
Yeah, I got to warm things up a little bit, Anyway, my car sounds like that in the morning. Too.
Yeah, it's true.
It just I feel like we're aging appropriately together. But anyways, I was looking at the mirror the other day, and I was like, I had this thought, like, there's more life behind me than in front of me. And I know it's it's like not, it's not necessarily the most positive thought. Like the thought of me living in 90, okay, possible, very possible, but probably not probable.
Sure.
Based on my family's health histories and stuff like that. But it started me thinking about like, okay, how am I going to invest these next 45 years? How am I going to invest so that it's not just what I'm doing, though that's a part of it, but what am I leaving behind? What am I building? What legacy do I want to leave?
Yeah.
What can I do that's going to help the next generation, should the Lord tarry, go further faster?
Very good.
And it's just something I'm thinking about now. It's just as I think about our church, as we think about expansion, as I think about my own kids and the financial freedoms and leaving an inheritance for your children and being a wise investor, and just all of these thoughts that honestly, when I was your age in my 26s, I was just trying to get through the day. Like I wasn't thinking about legacy per se.
Yeah.
But now I'm more actively thinking about that and thinking, okay, what kind of impact am I going to have? How am I going to be remembered, for one, but two, what am I going to leave behind that's going to be able to help my kids or the next generation of leaders or the next pastors or of this church and next community of this church thrive further faster? What sacrifices am I willing to make so that they don't have to make those?
Yeah.
What investments am I willing to make? What costs am I willing to pay? What ground am I willing to take?
Yeah.
And I think they're exciting. They're scary because there's always cost associated with it.
Absolutely.
But it's also really exciting knowing that I'm reaping the benefit of somebody else's faith. So who can reap the benefit of my faith? Is my faith big enough for others to reap the benefit of that?
Very good.
And I think that's the legacy navigation that I'm thinking about now.
Yeah. And I want to think about that. in my 20s.
Yeah.
I want to live my life with purpose so that I have something that I am working towards for the majority of my life.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that looks like. But again, Proverbs tells us that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children, but not just to his children, to his children's children, right? There is an inheritance. So I know Proverbs this is speaking to some financial stewardship and financial management so that they're well taken care of. But it also speaks to what are you depositing into your future generations? Like, what are you investing into? Are you kind of spending everything on yourself, or are you depositing into the future? Billy Graham quotes, he's like, the greatest legacy one can pass to one's children or grandchildren is not money or material things accumulated in one's life, but rather a legacy of character and faith.
So good.
Of character and faith. And what do we know? We know that reputation outlasts money. Like reputation outlasts money. Money comes and money goes, but reputation, it lasts, right?
Good.
And therefore, lasting legacy needs to be more than earthly riches. And again, there's a conversation for earthly wealth and earthly riches and wealth management and leaving an inheritance to your children and being a good steward of the resources that God has given you financially. But just as importantly, or even more importantly, arguably, is what kind of character are you molding? What kind of faith are you depositing? What inheritance are you leaving for your children? Jesus goes on to say in Matthew 6, he's like, don't store up yourself treasures on earth. Why? Because it's going to be destroyed. Moth or rust or thief. It's as easy come, easy go. But rather fix your focus and change your focus to store up treasures in heaven. Again, the only thing we're going to bring into heaven is people, right? It's souls. Because that's not going to be destroyed by moth and rust and thieves. And so shift your perspective to not just store up treasures on earth, but to actually store up your treasures in heaven. And he actually goes on to say, it's for where your treasure is, there your heart also is. And again, so if you're investing into stocks, like maybe you don't have investments. Like I don't have a lot of investments, so I don't really look at stocks. I know people who have stocks and they look at stocks all the time, because they're invested into it. Their heart is there. Therefore, that's where the treasure is rather. Therefore, they're invested into it. They want to know. When you're invested into your kids, when you're invested into whatever, wherever you put your money, your heart follows after that. And I think Jesus was just telling us, hey, just refocus your investments, refocus your priority, invest into the things that matter, and your heart will follow. Your heart will follow. And so this is the kind of legacy we're trying to live, not just what we leave for people, but what we leave in people.
Very good.
And so, we just again, we're looking at the words from Wise. We're looking at Proverbs 4, verse 20. There's this beautiful image of King Solomon, speaking, and he's sharing from his experience. He's like, my child, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words. Don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart. Why? For they bring life to those who find them and healing for the whole body. So, we had this visual. It's like when you're trying to get your kids' attention and you cup their head with your hands to like get them, and you pull yourself in nice and close so they can actually see you and focus on you and eliminate all the distractions. And you're trying to get eyeball to eyeball, almost like nose to nose as you listen to me. This is important stuff. This is life-giving stuff. And I love the tension between the two. It's not only life-giving, but it's healing. Hey, you may have made some wrong decisions along the way. This is the way to get back on the right road.
Yeah.
You're going to find life on the front side of it, but you're also going to find healing if you're on the back side of it, the wrong side of it. So I think there's just hope in that for all of us 100%. Because not all of us, when we look at this list, we're like, ooh.
Yeah, totally.
Right? I think I might have failed this. I'm falling short on some of these things, if not all of these things. So what's the hope? No, the hope is there's healing actually. If you can actually get back on the road.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So here we see this beautiful picture. So what does he say? He says you got to guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. You need to avoid perverse talk. It means you got to stay away from corrupt speech. You got to look straight ahead, fixing your eyes on what lies before you, and then you need to make out a straight path for your feet, to stay on that safe path, to not get sidetracked and keep your feet from following evil. And so what we're basically saying is, I think Solomon had laid out a pathway on how we can begin to live out a legacy worth remembering. That if we can actually be people who guard our hearts, watch what we say, tame our tongues, right? Fix our focus, stay focused on the important things, don't get distracted, And then the hardest part, or the continual hardest part, is like just to stay on the path. Like watch where you're walking.
Yeah.
Like don't get distracted. Don't trip up on what seems to be in the flashy thing, but stay focused. And so really we just kind of talked about this. It's just like, hey, what does it look like to guard our hearts? What does it look like? It's the spring of life. I mean, David says his prayers, may the words of my mouth and also the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you. Why? Because the overflow of our words are rather the overflow of our heart.
Yep. Jesus has a lot to say about that.
A lot to say. Yeah. It's important to guard our heart. And, what are we allowing to penetrate our heart? I mean, this is a question for all of us. What are we consuming? What are we reading? What are we pondering and dwelling upon and harboring in our hearts? What ideas are we allowing to form us and shape us from the inside out? And I think we have to be more vigilant.
I agree.
In guarding what we allow in.
Yeah.
And as I say, I'm speaking to me as I say this. This is something, we dismiss things. We it's no big deal. Yeah. And it may not be. Or maybe it is actually a bigger deal than you are allowing it to be.
Yeah.
Or acknowledging it to be.
Yeah.
And so really the proof's in the pudding. Is if you have words of rage, your first response is anger or frustration or gossip or slander or cursing. If that's the first response, then guess what? The overflow of your heart is that's what's actually abiding in your heart.
Yep.
Proverbs tells us that it is the spring of life. It is the wellspring of life. Everything you do flows from it. So if that's the truth, then shouldn't we guard what is being deposited into the spring of our life? Yep. Right? We're not going to allow the junk in there.
Yeah.
We shouldn't allow the junk in there.
Junk in, junk out.
Junk in, junk out. And so, I mean, I think you could just stand there and just be like, hey, are you guarding your heart?
Oh, no matter what stage of life you're at, that's convicting.
Right? Are you guarding your heart? And again, there's biblical practices to doing it. Obviously, you got to read your God's word, and you got to mind what you allow in. You got to mind who's influencing you. There's a lot of things to think through that, but ultimately, you have to take responsibility for this. This is something that you can do for me, or I can do for you.
Yeah.
We can encourage, we can help, support, but ultimately, I'm responsible for the heart that's in me.
Yeah.
And are we guarding that heart? And we just, again, the overflow of that is then avoiding that perverse talk. Because if I guard what comes into my heart, then it's easier to protect what's coming out of my heart, my mouth as the overflow. Pastor Jason talked about a lot of this last week, so we don't need to talk about the negative thing. But I was thinking if instead of just focusing on what we shouldn't say, like gossiping and slander and cussing and cursing and all that stuff, like words of poison, right? Pastor Jason talked about the fruit of our life and the poison of our life. But what should we say? Well, we should be speaking truth, right? I love this, like this interaction that Paul has with Timothy in 1 Timothy 6. He says, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Like you need to guard, and what has been entrusted? You've been given influence. Remember, this is along the same. Don't let anyone look down upon you because you're young. But be an example of good of speech and conduct and character. Like set an example, even though you're young, even though you maybe you may not measure up to what the people think you should be like. So you got to entrust. You have to guard what has been entrusted to your care, and then he gives them some qualifications of what that actually means. And the first thing is stay away from the godless chatter. Like mind what you speak.
Very good.
Like this is how you guard what has been entrusted to you. You be careful of the words you say. You don't get into foolish ideas and foolish arguments that are just like popping up like weeds. Don't get lost in those kind of things.
Wow.
Just protect your heart. And I think there's something really important, and that is like, hey, we got to speak the truth, but you speak the truth in grace. I love Craig Rochelle always says, everything you say needs to be true, but not everything true needs to be said. Again, that's something you can sit on for a while.
Yeah.
As you evaluate the conversations that you engage in. And so let's speak the truth and then use your words as worship. And this is where I got a little bit convicted this week. It's like, Psalms tells us to let every generation tell of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power. What if we used our words to proclaim the words of God? And here's what I've discovered. Our kids repeat what we say. They repeat what we say. You go on Instagram or TikTok or Reels or whatever you want, whatever your platform of choice is, and you'll find videos of little kids saying, unpleasantries, right? They're like swearing, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they say something, it's like they drop the F-bomb or they say different words. I'm not going to say them all.
Yeah.
You know what they say. And in their age, it's like it catches the parents off guard and it's kind of cute.
Right.
They laugh. It's kind of cute. It's not cute at some point. It becomes uncute.
Yeah.
But what would it be like if instead of them repeating what they're hearing in the negative side, what if they're actually hearing and repeating the goodness of God? Like, what if those are the things that we hear our kids say as they hear the things, like the goodness of God, the power of God, the proclamations of who God is? And so we actually use our words as worship on a regular basis instead of just like, frying up the pastor on the way home from church or, gossiping about that person that we sat beside or behind us or, or whatever the situation is, but we're actually praising God.
How about even just the first thing out of your mouth not being something negative and what you didn't like?
Yeah.
Is this what we do?
Yeah.
At church is an easy example because we go there all the time. But anything,
Yeah.
the first thing you say most of the time is what you didn't like about it.
Yeah.
And Ashley talks about this to our kids and Harbour kids all the time. Like, do our words build up or do they tear down?
100%.
And if we have a culture of our words building up and that being the first thing that we say, not that negative things can't be said.
But there's
Then-
appropriate place to have them.
100%.
Like I'm with you. And I have this phrase, this is my mind too right now. It's like, hey, is what I'm saying exposing somebody or covering somebody?
That was very good. I really liked that.
And I think that this is kind of where I'm sitting right now because gossip, people don't know what gossip is. Gossip is exposing somebody. You're exposing somebody to another person who has no power or influence to change the circumstance or the situation because you're just wanting to tell the story because the stories are juicy. That's why we do them. They're exciting. There's a whole TV show called Desperate Housewives or, Real Wives of whoever. And all it is just gossip after gossip after gossip because it's juicy. It sells.
Yeah.
But there's this, we are called to protect people, to cover people. And, it's just the whole more a story of Noah being exposed and how his sons covered him versus the other son who exposed him. Like we have a responsibility to cover. Covering does not mean that we are saying that person was right. It's not that. It's just like recognizing that there's appropriate places for conversations to be had with the appropriate people.
Yep.
And we're gonna protect that. And that's how we protect unity.
Yeah.
Right? We protect unity by covering one another and having the appropriate conversations in the appropriate arenas with the appropriate people.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. And might we just say, as pastors, gossip is a sin
Flat out.
in a list of quite vulgar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the church, not our church, but the church needs to take that a little bit more seriously in today's age.
I think so. I mean, in a world where everyone has the right to say whatever they want to say, again, you go back to what Craig Rochelle says, everything you needs to be true. Sure. But not everything true needs to be said.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a conversation all of us have. Understanding, again, go through the filter of legacy. What legacy are you leaving?
Yeah.
How are you wanting to be remembered? What are you depositing into the next generation? What platform are you setting up for the next generation to follow after or to rise above? Are you raising the bar? Or are you lowering the bar?
Absolutely.
And I do think gossip lowers the bar. I think slander lowers the bar. I don't think it raises the bar for the next generation to go further and faster. I think we're just lowering it down. And I think it's time for all of us to self-check, to recorrect, to find healing in the fact that, hey, we can avoid perverse talk, right? We can talk about this all day. But
I love it.
I mean, we see this again in Paul talking to Timothy about his grandparents and his grandmother and his mother, how they worshipped, and now their worship and the thing that they believed is now in Timothy, and he's acknowledging that in Timothy. Like,
Passed on to
if something's being passed on, like let that be passed on, So we got to do that. Guard your heart, avoid your perverse talk, fix your focus. Again, this is this lifelong pursuit of reordering your focus to give God the first place in your life.
Yeah.
Because let's just be honest, like life is full of distractions. We've never had more accessible distractions than we do now.
Yeah.
Accessible distractions. And so how do we just refocus to make sure seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added onto you.
Yeah.
So seek first the kingdom of God. Like let him be the Lord of your life. And then the hardest step along the way, or not the hardest, they're all hard, but it's just this constant of just watching your step. Make out that straight path, stay on that safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil, right? I love how Psalms 119 tells us that the word of God is a lamp unto our feet and light unto our path. Like, it illuminates where we are. And if we can stay in that daily place of connecting with God regularly, then he will light up the path for the day, and just stay on that path. Don't get sidetracked. Don't get pulled off. Don't get distracted. Be vigilant, remain vigilant, and protect that legacy. And so a good name is more desirable than riches, Proverbs tells us, Proverbs 22. And so how do we build up that good name?
Yeah.
We guard our heart.
Very good.
We watch what we talk. We tame our tongue. We fix our focus, and we watch where we walk. That's how we build up a good name. That's how we build a legacy worth remembering. And here's the thought. A legacy worth remembering is not built in the spectacular moments. It's not built in those over-the-top moments. It's built through the faith-filled, consistent, and obedient steps of living God's way every day. And if we can do that every day, be obedient, faith-filled, consistent to guarding our heart, avoiding talk, taming our tongue, fixing our focus, and watching where we walk, we will leave a legacy worth remembering.
Very good.
In fact, we'll begin to live that legacy out in real time. And that's the goal. That's the goal. And that's the words from the wise for this week.
Very good. Love it. Wow. What a blessing and encouragement. Thanks for joining us for Sunday Encore today. We pray that this sparks Jesus-centered conversations in your home as we continue to grow into an overflowing relationship with Jesus.